Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to look at Calvino Noir. This is created by Calvino Noir Limited, available for PC and Mac. It is a 2D screen side scroller stealth game with a noir theme title into it. How well does it actually manage to pull those qualities off? And that's what we'll dive into here today. And we'll begin in the options menu. Now the options menu doesn't have a lot to it. You have full screen. I've been playing the game at 1920 by 1080 and I've not had any performance issues such as tearing, clipping, or crashing. The game has also been running at 60 frames per second, so I've not had any issues in those regards. One thing I would like to point out at this time is while the game starts off strong with having a 1930s noir sense of music, jazz, and dark, soothing atmosphere, the music soon thereafter follows through. The music doesn't even have sliders, and the music that it is in the game that perpetuates through the game is at a very low tone key, and it doesn't accentuate itself throughout the player's experience. It doesn't raise itself up to the hierarchs of the moment and the situations. At best, it keeps it to a tone of elevator music, just slightly enough there in the background for you to understand that it's there, to acknowledge it, but nothing other than white noise. The game doesn't have any soul that's transmitted throughout the music, which is an unfortunate aspect. So let's talk about the story first off, as it is a noir title. Now if you're not aware, noir is a sort of 1930s or around that time frame with a gritty, darker theme environment about usually a detective that's in over his head or on a major case. The story in this plays one part detective. They call it a scrambler, which is sort of a infiltrator slash spy. It has some elements of those, but it does make you feel where you're not that emotionally connected to the player or the purpose of your involvement in the story, and you're there for very specific reasons. The lack of emotional connectivity with you as a player does tie into the gameplay with how it splits up your gameplay so you're not fully focused on your main character, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. What I do want to talk about is the time frame and location. The location takes place in Europe, around 1930s they say, but it feels a little bit more like 1925. Most of the atmosphere takes place in dialogue in lieu of referencing the last Great War, which would be World War I. The environment is very dark, and perhaps too dark, as it is supposed to be a stealth game. They do give you a flashlight, which is appreciative throughout the story. But the main goal for you as the character is to detect, is to explore the different maps and levels and propel the story forward. And I will admit that while you're going through these different environments, there are little icons that you can click on, and the descriptions of these icons are done in a very professional manner. The way the dialogue is read, in between what the dialogue has to say and how it just rolls off the voice actor's tongue, is done very elegantly. Really, the only voice actor I didn't really care for was the woman. They do say that the woman is about 20 years old in this game, and I can kind of disbelieve with that voice, but she just seems not of the same quality as the rest of the characters. When you think of this character, what would have come to mind is Roger Rabbit, the female character, the animated cartoon lady, in that had an atmosphere and a robust energy about her. Every way she moved, walked was sensual, every way she talked was with a purpose. The main female character in this one doesn't have that same grapple. Now, the character that you play as, the man, does, and that's why it's important to bring forth that contrast so you can understand, because of the way the story is laid out, you're not just dealing with your main male protagonist, there's also a female protagonist as well, but she doesn't have that same weight, draw, or drive, and even fiery, robust energy to really dive into the world that is striving against her goals. For the most part, I did enjoy the story aspect of the game. I found the game itself to actually be fairly enjoyable, as if reading a book. Of course, reading a book, though it was voice acted, can be a little slow or dry when you're expecting to play a game. But outside of that, I rather enjoyed the voice acting and the story of the game, and I'll let you hear some of that for yourself now.
Biblical rain pummels the city, but the stains remain. The world could empty its oceans onto these cobbled streets, and the streets would flush them right back. Nothing would change. There are those who eventually flee, and there are those who learn to exist here. They accept the unyielding filth within and without. They adapt.
Hello, Wilt. I'm glad to see you're alive and well after what Moritz pulled last night.
Moritz? You mean your Weasley little friend who cracked me in the skull and left me unconscious in the town hall?
Believe it or not, he wasn't supposed to stitch you up like that. He's disappeared with the files. Gone to pursue his personal vendetta against Ignace. Some family matter, I think. He did telephone me to tell me what was in the plans, at least. I guess he'd rather I was scrolling through distiller events than chasing him around.
Sounds perfectly unconvincing. What are you doing with that door?
Take another look at the plans from the hall. Notice anything odd?
Wait. Yes. Right here where we are standing. This part of the distillery. It's not in the plans.
Care to elaborate?
I'm fairly sure this secret extension is being used for something ugly by Ignat's corrupt associates in the Randain Union.
In the lower chamber, they are producing sulfur trioxide and feeding it into this upper hidden section. Any idea why?
No, but that's why I'm here. Help me find out?
The issues with the story come into how they are represented to the character throughout the gameplay, thus meaning a lack of appreciation for the player. The reason why is that you don't just play as one person, but you also play as 3 characters, usually 2. You would think that being the detective or mercenary scrambler that you are, you would have some tricks to be able to unlock your common door. We're not talking about unlocking a safe or a vault or things like that, but your average door to get into places, you think you would have that sort of availability or skill under your belt. Or perhaps a very simple task of operating a control panel, but unfortunately you do not, and they put these unneeded restrictions upon your gameplay by making you have to control multiple characters in the world. One character will only be able to take out guards, while the other can pick through locks and the third can operate machinery. But none of these are so in-depth, or the locks so complex, or the mechanical devices so robust in their ingenuity that would prevent someone who's not a hardcore lifer in that field of study to be able to do it. The way the environment and the world come together in order to expedite the player's experience in the world is lackluster. The game does not respect your time, unfortunately. It plays and invites you in as a stealth mentality, but when you have to move 3 characters throughout the map, doing it in a stealthy mentality can be very tedious, I want to say. Sure, you may get your first 2 characters through, but then what happens if your third one ends up getting caught? Well, then they get shot and killed, which means you automatically load back up to your checkpoint, which means all that time you spent was wasted. It doesn't have that subtlety, that quickness, that guile that you would from just having one character that's sneaking through. The reason that you're timing out the enemy patrols is you have to do it 3 times. Unfortunately, this is even the case in situations where there are no enemies in between you and where you need to get. You could be on the top level of a building and you need to gather one item, and in the story, the chick will say, grab that item and meet me downstairs or outside. You would think then that the character or whoever else is in that room will go downstairs and outside, while you go do what you do. Instead, after you grab up what you need to grab up, you then need to manually bring every single one of the people outside. While this is just a one stark comparison of what you can expect, it's still a comparison that brings in a huge amount of annoyance to the player. Because it's not about that subtlety, that quickness, that discerning the environment and understanding what you're doing, rather than just waste your time by dragging people across the map. And unfortunately this downplays the story aspect, because instead of feeling accomplished for what you're doing throughout your gameplay, you end up just feeling like it's tedious, which takes a negative pressure on the story. No matter how good or bad you think it is, the story itself then takes the suffering because it doesn't have that high-end capture. It's not explosions and huge romance and a huge reveal of hooks and special effects. It's a very subtle, dry, but well written in a literary manner. But it's not enough to really overcome the sheer amount of annoyance that can derive from the gameplay. So what you end up doing at the end is just moving with your main character, taking out all the guards, eliminating any reason for you to be stealthy, placing every unit you have on run, and moving forward to get through as fast as possible. Now perhaps the more you'll enjoy the game, this will become less so. But the mechanics of a game versus your enjoyment of a game are two different things. As the story went around, I understood the narration of the gameplay and how my actions led throughout the game, but I didn't really feel any satisfaction that I was accomplishing something. That my drawbacks in the world due to the story revealing that everything I did was counterproductive to my overall goal because I was duped by the antagonist, I don't really have a feeling of, oh, I'm going to get you and I'm going to come back stronger than before. The story feels very fragmented. It feels more like a selection of chores that you need to do. The level design in the game between the side screen scrolling elements does have a good fluidity to it, although you have to have a level of disbelief because of the basic way that the game is designed. It makes no sense really that in the beginning of a mission you start out in your hotel and then directly behind your hotel is the town hall, your first mission. Sure, they might have been able to spruce a little things up here and there, but for progressional purposes, it makes sense. You just hop in to the next map instantly and you keep going, and that's fine by me. There is a certain level of disbelief in how the level design is presented to the player in order to allow them to continue forward. But there's certain areas which you just really can't get that feeling from. It's understandable that if I'm roaming through a town hall or a secret warehouse, that the guards will shoot me if they spot me. But what is the excuse for the guards shooting me in the subway? The subway that is littered with plenty of other people and civilians, but if a guard sees you, he'll shoot you. There's inconsistencies within the gameplay and the story that don't tie in well. So at the end of the day, I actually enjoyed the level design because of the atmosphere of the world, although there were some inconsistencies as I've stated. It has a good dark noir theme, dark, gritty, and a story of a spy/detective which really makes you feel like you're the character. Unfortunately, that is dropped by the gameplay, where you don't actually get to experience any connectivity to your player because you have to dance around 3 characters, and the story doesn't enrich you into understanding the relationships in between these characters, but rather drives a wedge in between everybody. Even in the end, when everything works out to the way that it's meant to, I'm trying not to spoil anything, it doesn't really have that same flair as if the party was to stay together and you were able to play as one character, rescuing your friends or saving the day or helping out the team, whatever terminology you want to use. Because it's so fragmented and divided, they spend too much time trying to develop the other character aspects as main personalities instead of just letting those extras be extras. On sale, I would recommend this game if you have an intrigue for this style of play, but it's not the best gameplay. It has an intriguing story that with a atmosphere can wrap you up, but there is a definite need for patience. It is very slow going gameplay, and at full price, it's really not worth it, which is rather sad to say seeing how cheap it is. Did I enjoy my time in this game? Yes and no. I enjoyed the story until the story became too fragmented. I never was allowed to feel any connectivity to the main character, and the gameplay overall just really annoyed me. But it's not necessarily bad, and that's where the divide comes from. While I didn't enjoy it personally, if you are a strong fan of Noir titles, and you don't mind a slower paced game, then you may enjoy this game. It does have achievements on Steam, and it does have collectibles on each map that you can search around for and try to find. It has content, if you enjoy it, to try to keep you enthralled for a little bit longer. I feel it just missed the mark in understanding how to create a story that enthralls the player throughout the entirety of a story, rather than multi-layer, fragmental dimensions of stories based on multiple characters. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm SocioPsycho. It's a recommend hesitantly for people who are strongly motivated or enjoy Noir titles. Otherwise, you're best just to overlook this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
To